There's a drive way back. It might be. It could be. It is. Holy cow. Welcome to another broadcast of Bricks Behind the Ivy.
Hey, Cub fans! Welcome to another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. I am your host, Jeff Candid Cubs Rikowskis, and we're here to talk another exciting week of Chicago Cubs baseball. Well, exciting might be a strong definition, but it was definitely one of the weeks of the year. Yes, as the Cubs roll out of the All-Star break, they were chasing the right to continue to keep this team together, even though they're not really constructed to sell. So they really needed to win some of these games. So let's get right into it with the box score blitz. 3, 2, 1, go. The Chicago Cubs start the All-Star break at home, a 2-3 game series versus the Diamondbacks and the Brewers, and it was not the best start for a team looking to build some momentum. They lost 2 of 3 to the Diamondbacks, and they lost 2 of 3 to the Brewers. So they only won 2 of their first 6 games at home, first teams that they are currently chasing in the standings. What was the story of these 2 series? It was the offense. The Cubs' offense was abysmal. They had 9 runs in 6 games, and they are the only team since the All-Star break at this moment that has yet to score 10 runs in the first 6 games since returning. Yikes, even the White Sox have 10 runs as of last night. They have a 54 weighted runs created plus, which is second to last in baseball, only above the White Sox, and they have a 191 team batting average and a 287 BABIP. That is not good. It is not going to get the job done. And it's too bad because the pitching was excellent. Cubs were 7 for 41 with runners in scoring position in these 2 series. But in their 2 wins, what was the highlight? The pitching. Cubs pitching has been super strong of late. Shota Imanaga, fresh off of his visit to Arlington to be the Cubs representative in the All-Star. Congratulations, Shota. He dominated again. This is versus an Arizona team that was 9th in baseball versus left-handed pitchers this season. He had 19 whiffs in 7 innings pitched. He had 2 hits, 1 run, 1 earned run, 1 walk, and 10 Ks. Shota shoved. Jameson Taillon continued to build on his potential trade value as he threw 7.1 innings versus the Brewers. 4 hits, 1 run, 1 earned run, 3 walks, and 3 strikeouts. He looked very good. It may be his last start as a Cub. He is scheduled to start next week, but if the Cubs are actually negotiating the trade, Jameson Taillon, I'm not sure he should start next week, just in case, because it's supposed to start the day before the trade deadline. Any pauses on offense? Yeah, Miguel Amaya. Miguel Amaya eliminated a leg kick in his swing, and he's been pretty hot of late. Small sample size alert. In the last 5 games, he's hitting .667 with an 18% walk rate and a 0% strikeout rate. It's been nice to see him get going, and without that leg kick, he might have found something. And that is the box score blitz. So not a lot to talk about with these 2 series at Wrigley. Just no runs scored. The Cubs had a small winning streak on Sunday into Monday, winning some close games, 1 in extra innings, and 1 with some home runs from Ian Happ, but still only maxing out at 3 runs in those games. Yeah, the Cubs pitching has really stabilized and has looked quite good for a decent amount of time. But before the All-Star break, the offense was cooking. And since the All-Star break, which obviously is only 6 games in, the offense has pretty much disappeared, which is super, super disappointing. Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins have been doing the tours, and people have been asking what direction this team's going to take. And they seem to be thinking towards the sell side, and I don't think it's the traditional sell sense that a lot of folks who follow baseball are thinking. It's not a tear it down to the studs type of situation, but it seems like the Cubs will be entertaining offers on players, and how wide of offers and whom is included in that is kind of up for debate.
I'm in a glass case of emotion!
But the thing is, as we've discussed on this pod, and as a lot of Cub pundits have discussed, there's just not a lot of contracts that are on this team that are going to be easy to move because of no trade clauses, longer financial commitments, and other things that are generally barriers for mid-year trades. So We will see what happens, but let's do a quick standings check, as the Cubs are technically still in the hunt for a playoff spot as those hopes dwindle every day. And Craig Counsell and the gang have said that they're still focusing on making the playoffs. And if this team does get hot offensively and the pitching remains as good as it has been of late and as good as it has been for most of the year, then they still have a shot, because no one has really run away with the wild card. But the division is over. At least for the Cubs, very likely. The Milwaukee Brewers are in first, the 59-43 record. Right behind them is the St. Louis Cardinals, 53-49. Then we have Paul Skeens' revitalized Pittsburgh Pirates, 52-50. Paul Skeens got his first loss the other night, even after striking out 8 and pitching into the 9th. He only gave up 2 runs. The Reds are just ahead our beloved Cubbies at 49-53, and the Cubs are in last in the Central at 49-55. They are currently 11 games back of first place, and now 5.5 games back of the wild card. So, yeah, pretty bleak. Not this season we were expecting, and I think there'll be much more to talk about in the future when it comes to the 2024 Cubs and how they were constructed and how we will evaluate this season at the end of the year. But there's one thing that never disappoints, and that's Wrigleyville Sports. Wrigleyville Sports is a proud sponsor of Bricks Behind the Ivy. Go check out their store. They have been around since 1990, serving the public and serving Cubs fan before, after, and even on off day for the Cubs. They are right by Wrigley Field. They have the best selection of Cubs, Bears, White Sox, and other Cubs, Chicago sports teams. So check them out today. There's a link in the description of this podcast. Please go check it out. And while you're there at checkout, use our special code IV10 for 10% off of your order. And thank you, Wrigleyville Sports, for continuing to sponsor our podcast. So before I go into one of the trade candidates and discussing the likelihood and the value of this individual player we're going to look at, we do have a quick pit stop from everybody's favorite classic Cubs announcer, Mr. Harry Caray, with another Deep Thoughts with Harry Caray.
Holy cow! Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Deep Thoughts with yours truly, Harry. We're coming in. You might be looking around going, where are you? This doesn't look like the Wrigley Fire Bar and Grill, but today I decided to come on up here to Milwaukee to try to figure out if I can get some of the mojo of what they just did to us in a 3-game set. I'm at the world famous Fourth Base Restaurant here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You might see it on the feed. You know, this place is great. You got the owner back there, CJ, but this place is known. You see this bar right here? This place was featured in the last scene of the movie Major League. Go Ricky, go Ricky. But before we get started here on the podcast, I want to do this week's special shout out to, you know how I always say, you know, a special shout out to everybody. Well, you know, every time I say that, you know, I need to have guys in the booth, you know, they got to run the stats because I'm a little inebriated. Ooh, boy. Well, I got the guys in the booth here with me. I got the Cirillo Trio right there. They are. And there's Sleepy down there. Boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. Special shout out to Joseph Daniel Deacon coming up here from Bloomington Normal with this can of Pringle. And then we got Philip Geiersbach. Don't even ask me how to spell that backward. Boy, oh, boy, there's a tongue twister. But anyway, hey, for all you boys doing the booth, hey, boys, this cold one for you. Ooh, boy, but you know, on to bigger and better thing. I don't even know what the heck's going on with the ball club. You know, our offense is kind of like a group of crickets. I mean, it's so gosh darn quiet. I don't even know what's going on. Our pitching staff is throwing a Jim Dandy, but we can't even hit water if we fell out of a freaking boat. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. How many times can we possibly leave the bases loaded? But here's what I want you people to do. Comment here on the comment below the doohickey. Let me know what your thoughts are on the trade deadline. I've heard so many things about trade Taillon, trade Suzuki, hey, konnichiwa, trade, Ian Happ. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen? Could be a big weekend. Who knows? But I tell you what, I'm going to go over there to AmFam Field or Miller Park, or I don't even know what the hell the name of the ballpark is. But I'm going to see if I can steal some of their mojo and bring it south over the border and bring it on over to 1060 West Addison. But it's not even August yet. You gotta believe. So for all you do, this brews for you. And go Cubs, and hey, so long, everybody.
Well, I always do enjoy Harry's segments. It's always great to have him on the pod. So unfortunately, the thing we have to talk about now is the trade deadline and the Cubs' approach to the trade deadline in 2024, which at the beginning of the season, I don't know if I was naive in thinking that this team was constructed to be better than they are, or if I'd spent too much time ignoring the minutia and the operation on the fringes of this roster and how specific needs were addressed. We're still kind of sitting in the same spot as we were at the beginning of the season, where we were concerned about slugging and this team's ability to score runs. And at that time, we were concerned about Shota Imanaga and his ability to cover the innings the Cubs lost in losing Marcus Stroman. And Shota Imanaga has been obviously a revelation and has been fantastic for the Cubs this year. So that ended up being a non-issue, but we're still sitting on the offensive woes of this club that is truly missing a dynamic all-star or dynamic bat in the middle of the lineup to really raise the floor of a lot of these guys. As a lot of folks have pointed out, there's just not a player in this lineup that a team kind of puts together a game plan to get out and then may have used energy or mental energy to get that individual player or individual players out and then kind of slip up on some of the ancillary pieces of the squad. And it is frustrating looking up and down this roster and looking at this payroll, which is, one of the top 10 in baseball. You'd think with the money that they have spent, this team would be better. They would be competing for this division. And here we are sitting in last place with 18 plus blown saves on the season. If we take half of those back, we're having a completely different conversation. But the die has been cast. The results are the results. And here we are. So a name that's been floated around a lot in trade discussions and potential availability has been Jameson Taillon. Jameson Taillon was signed in the offseason prior to the 2023 baseball season and came to the Cubs with a lot of expectations of kind of being the workhorse, and the Cubs thought that they could unlock something with his pitches and make him strike out some batters and take it to another level. That seemed what he was promised. The start to the marriage of Cub fans and Mr. Jameson Taillon wasn't great. He started the first half of last year pretty poorly. It didn't exactly remind me of when John Lester signed with the Cubs, but it had a similar feel of getting a big contract coming to Chicago and then not performing to the expectations immediately that people had expected. But ultimately, John Lester is a little bit different. He was the key piece in a team that was elevating towards the World Series. Jameson Taillon was a solid middle-of-the-rotation depth that the Cubs had signed for around $18 million a year. But in the first half of 2023, he had a fielding independent pitching of 490, which is quite high, and a BABIP of 310. So most of the balls being hit off Jameson Taillon were landing at a pretty good clip, and he led the Cubs with a 13.3% home run per fly ball rate. So a lot of the fly balls coming off of Jameson Taillon's pitches were ending up in the bleachers or wherever they ended up playing. So not a great start for Taillon in his Cubs career. But since the All-Star break of 2023, he's been a completely different pitcher. He's really solid down the stretch, And from that point to this year, it's been 12-9 with a 3.30 ERA, 183 innings pitched, and 155 strikeouts, which is good for about 2.6 WAR. And there's a variety of innings pitched and value, but it puts him in top 50 of valued pitchers, starting pitchers in Major League Baseball in that time frame, which with playoff teams like the Orioles and some other teams starving for pitching, they could see the value of Jameson Taillon in their rotation as someone that can give them innings while their offense goes and cooks. So what are the challenges? What are the challenges of moving Jameson Taillon? Well, he has about 2.5 years of control left. His contract currently has 2 years after this year of $18 million apiece, and the remainder of this year, which was an $18 million a year as well. The first year of his 4-year contract was a $14 million year. So the average annual value in the cap calculation would be about $17 million for Jameson Taillon. So if the Cubs are going to move him, the trade that they could make, the value of it for the Cubs is going to increase by the amount of money they retain. So if the Cubs trade Jameson Taillon, I think it'll signal to me their intents for 2025 on how much money they retain of Jameson Taillon. Now, mind you, the Cubs currently are still paying a number of players who are not on this roster, which is adding to some of the large amounts or the high payroll the Cubs have in 2024 and the questions about how this payroll is not able to construct a winning team. But the Cubs are a large market squad and should have the ability to eat a contract like this in order to increase the prospect return. So what's different about Jameson Taillon? What has changed from 2023 to 2024? Is there a certain pitch that he's using that is more effective? Is there a strikeout rate increase? Is there a ground ball rate increase? Well, the answer is a little more complicated as I dug into it. He has been pretty much the same pitcher. He's walked way less people in 2024. In 2023, Jameson Taillon was in the 80th percentile with a 6.3% walk rate, where this year he's in the 89th percentile with a 5.1% walk rate. He's still only striking out guys around 19% of the time, but the biggest difference in his pitches and pitch run value per Baseball Savant is actually his fastball. And I was looking into this pitch a little bit more, trying to get an idea if there was a usage change or if there was some sort of movement change, and it was actually ended up being a movement change. Jameson Taillon was throwing his fastball around 34% of the time last year, and it's now about 32%, where the cutter he was throwing about 22% is up to 23.7%. So not significant change in pitch mix in those two pitches, but the thing that is interesting is the movement. So Jameson Taillon had a cutter that had average vertical movement in 2023 of about 4.1 inches, where he decreased that this year to about 0.7, which is a dramatic change. And then his horizontal release on that pitch, his horizontal movement, is at 2.3 inches versus in 2023 is at 1.1. So it's not moving down as much, and it's not moving, it is moving across more. And the results are pretty strong. And it's similar change in his fastball. He used to lose about 0.3 inches in 2023 on his fastball, and he's leveled that out as well. And the pitching run value for his fastball and cutter has increased to 9 for the cutter respectively and 3 for the fastball, where both were negative pitches in which he gave up significant hard contact with expected slugging of about 620 or 598 and 521, where his cutter has expected slugging of 350 this year and the fastball is at 545. So the cutter shifting, the way that he's used his cutter and the way they shaped his cutter has made him a much more valuable pitcher. Now, he does put a lot of balls in play, and he doesn't strike out guys like some other pitchers, but he is stable. He's got a 1.15 whip this year and has 17 starts. He did start with that lower back issue this year, which could make some teams hesitant in dealing for him, but he's 32 years old. This is a guy that might not be a huge part of a team for the Cubs' next good Cubs team, even as soon as 2025. And there are options available to replace his production in this coming offseason, including guys like Corbin Burns or Max Fried. Obviously, these are going to come at probably higher AAV than Jameson Taillon's 2023 signed contract, but the Cubs do have a significant amount of money coming off the books this year and could have even more if they deal a player like Taillon. So Jameson Taillon, do you think this is a player the Cubs will trade in 2024? Leave your answers in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, or head over to YouTube, subscribe to YouTube, and leave your answers in the comments on what you think. So the Cubs do have more baseball to play. The big storyline is going to be the trade deadline, and that is becoming a more depressing thought process for the 2024 Cubs, because I personally am just not ready to give up on this season because I have just an abundance of hope. I think that comes with the territory. It comes with being a Chicago Cubs fan. Sometimes you can convince yourself into believing the delusional. And for me, I don't think this team is a playoff team, but squeaking in the playoffs could mean something. It could mean something to landing the next great free agent. It could mean something in the direction of this organization. So I don't expect them to throw in the towel, but every day the path gets foggier. So before our next episode, which will be right after the trade deadline, I'm sure we'll have much to discuss. We will be having a 7-game road trip for the Cubs, 6-game road trip, and it'll be with the Royals and the Reds. Two players I think are worth watching if you're going to be watching these games are the shortstops of each team. Bobby Witt Jr., who I saw at the Home Run Derby, is just a super fun player to watch. He seems to have lightning quick hands. He's now leading the American League in WAR, which is going to make the American League MVP race very, very interesting as they look at Gunnar Henderson, Aaron Judge, and now Bobby Witt. He's fast. He steals a ton of bases. He plays excellent defense. He's leading shortstops in defensive run saves. He's just a all-around fun player and is likely why the Royals are so good. The team gels around his performance, and he does everything. In the Red Series, I do like the front of their pitching. I like Hunter Green an awful lot and Nick Lodolo, and we'll see if the Cubs get paired against those guys. But Elly De La Cruz now has 50 stolen bases on the season. He is so fun to watch. A lot of speed. Really, really big guy. 6'7", hits the ball really hard. Switch hitter. Just super fun. So those are two guys that I would watch out for as the Cubs enter these series. So I hope the Cubs can stack up some wins and make that series versus the Cardinals that's coming right after that trip at Wrigley, a 4-game series starting that Thursday, interesting, or at least worthwhile. The likelihood of that happening is pretty low. And I'm not trying to be a downer. It's just this team's offense seems broken. Cody Bellinger potentially is coming back this weekend, but I just don't know if he's going to come back healthy enough and slugging to kind of lift the floor of the production of this offense. And he just hasn't really been himself since even the rib fracture, as the slugging percentage has been way down this year. So it'll be challenging to kind of imagine the offense kind of clicking, and the Cubs pitching will continue to be pretty solid, but they're facing some pretty strong offenses in the next week. Well, that's all we have this week for Bricks Behind the Ivy. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please, if you're watching on YouTube, click that subscribe button, comment on things you want to see or things you liked about this episode. If you're listening to this on an audio podcast platform, please make sure to rate and review, as that increases the visibility for your boy and our team here at Bricks Behind the Ivy. So this has been Bricks Behind the Ivy, a Cubs podcast for Cub fans by Cub fans. We'll see you next week. And until then, go Cubs.
Did you know Bricks Behind the Ivy has a swag store? Check out the link in the bio and dress like a brickhead today.